I'm so glad that we could manage this situation or manage partially all the situations, or we are continuing with the academic deliberations digitally. And in particular, Department of Physics is doing a wonderful job during this pandemic period, during the last 3 months. I'm saying so as Dr. Renu Jacob has mentioned, this is the 7th webinar they are organizing during these 90 days. All of them are handled by the very good academicians from different parts of the world, and all of them are the alumni of Demas College and Department of Physics. So it is definitely a wonderful idea, and I really congratulate the Department of Physics for their endeavor, and I request them to go on with this type of activities even after the COVID situation as well. We are having a 3-day webinar. 3 speakers are planning to join with us. Today, Professor K.C. James Raju is joining us from Hyderabad, India. And tomorrow, Shakti Kumar will join Ohio University, Japan. And the day after tomorrow, Dr. Hari S. Nair joining us will join from Texas, USA. And I think I am not the right person to talk anything on the topic nanoscience or nanotechnology. As far as that topic is concerned, I am only a layman. I think so. Still, from the reading of the layman point of view, I came to understand the importance of nanotechnology and how these nanotechnology have been recently evolving to mitigate or nanotechnology solutions are being evolved to mitigate the different types of pandemic, particularly viral and bacterial infections, for their detection, even the protection, and even for their medication. Recently, I read an article. These certain type of nanoparticles or nanosensors, in fact, I think so. Nanosensors have the ability to detect bacteria and viruses even at very low loads. So the importance is thereby warning the clinicians even before the symptoms. So how these nanoscience and nanotechnology have been used in different. I'm only mentioning this scientific situation because we are all facing such a situation. So definitely the topic is very important. Lot of applications, different fields. So their selection of topic is also very good. So I wish all success to this particular webinar, and wish all the participants, speakers, and all delegates joining the webinar from different parts of India and different parts of the world in the coming 3 days. Wish you all success. And with these a few words, may I declare this webinar open. Thank you.
Thank you, Joshua sir. Next, we will be moving on to the session. Before that, let me request all the participants to kindly mute their mics. And also after the session, we will have a question and answer session also. The participants can post their questions in the chat box. I repeat, the participants who are having any query can post their questions in the chat box. Okay, now it's the time to know more about the resource person. It's a great privilege for me to introduce our guest, Dr. James Raju sir. Dr. James sir is a professor at the Center for Advanced Studies in Electronics, Science and Technology of School of Physics, University of Hyderabad since 2009. His main areas of research are materials phenomenon and properties at microwave range of frequencies, dielectric spectroscopy, thin films of ferroelectrics and piezoelectrics, laser and microwave based processing of ferroics, tunable microwave devices. He has to his credit 12 PhD students, 20 MTech projects, nearly 150 papers published, 3 patents, and 3 books co-authored. He has got 12 funded projects which are completed, and also international collaborations with 6 countries. We are very pleased to have you with us, sir, today. I welcome you wholeheartedly for the session, sir. Please.
Can you see the presentation?
No, sir. No.
No, sir, it's not visible.
We are having.
Is it visible now?
Yeah, sir, it is. Okay. Yeah, it's visible. But it is minimized, I think, sir.
Okay. Is it okay?
Yeah, yes, sir. Okay.
Okay. Thank you, the authorities of CMS College Kottayam for giving me this opportunity. I am really honored to be the speaker this day for this webinar. And it is always a great joy to associate with our alma mater in whatever way possible. In fact, maybe the change situations have forced us to now make use of these times this way. But even otherwise, now that the college has become an autonomous college, there are more opportunities for us to, for the college to get more and more into research. That is a good thing. And what best all of us can do, we will definitely will be doing, because we all want the college to come up, the Kerala to come up, our place to come up, and the students of the present generation should get benefited. Today I will be addressing primarily our MSc students, because I was told that many of them are attending, and also it is a heterogeneous audience, therefore I will be focusing primarily at that level. And the topic which I have chosen is not exactly on the nanotechnology, but an area which feeds nanotechnology, that ferroelectrics, multiferroics, and magnetoelectronics, the physical phenomena that gives rise to multifunctional materials. And I will be briefly introducing about multifunctionality in materials with a case study of ferroelectrics, and particularly why ferroelectric thin films, especially for nanotechnology. And I'll move to briefly on multiferroics and magnetoelectrics. Then I'll briefly mention how multifunctionality of ferroelectrics is helping in realizing miniaturized microwave resonators. See, achieving multifunctionality using materials. In nanotechnology, the motto is to achieve better functionality by exploiting the nanometer scale phenomena. The phenomena set to nanometer scale better. But to do that, we need materials that exhibit various physical phenomena. And for example, the entire electronics came up by exploiting the properties exhibited by different semiconductors and amenability to modification by doping. At present, the size reduction in semiconductors in two-dimensional plane have reached a kind of limit. The well-known Moore's law and its limits is known. But it has opened up new avenues for integration. One is three-dimensional or vertical integration, which is coming up really rapidly. Another one is a functional integration, integrating new functionalities into integrated systems. Certain functionalities can be brought in by micro-machined silicon-based structures called micro-electromechanical systems, or MEMS. Examples are accelerometers, gyroscopes, microphones, proximity sensor, etc., which makes the present-day smartphones a very versatile handheld device. It is in fact a system. However, the demand is to integrate more functions into integrated systems. Many of the functionalities are emanating from material systems that are natural or artificial. For example, right now we are familiar with these applications involving gyroscopes, accelerometers, which are all in the smartphone. For example, in fact, the next generation smartphones, the demand is the smartphones should also tell what is the pollutant level in your place, and the next, for example, environmental conditions in your respective place, what is the present situation, and the quality of the air where you are, is it breathable, or the next level, what are the pathogens around. For example, days may not be very far when your mobile will tell you whether coronavirus is around. And for all these things, what is required is more type of sensors, which will be able to interact with the surroundings in gaseous form, micro form, or in either microscopic particulate matter. And we need sensors to detect them and convert into electronic signals, so convert into ultimately current a voltage signal, so that it can be displayed in a handheld device. Therefore, of course, when we hold a mobile phone in our hand, we may think that it is an electronic device, but in fact, it is a system in which many of these sensors are getting integrated. We cannot carry so many handheld devices. Therefore, the present widely used handheld device is mobile phone. Therefore, the effort is to integrate more of these sensors into these smartphones. And for that, in fact, we exploit material properties, and integrating them at the nanometer scale is a major activity of the nanotechnology. What is being considered today is a set of functionalities offered by physical phenomena exhibited by some materials, and the way human intervention enables new functionalities to emerge from modification of such materials. I will begin with the ferroelectricity. And they themselves are first of all multifunctional materials. See, we know that there are 32 crystal classes, and each representing a type of unit cell, and of which 20 of them have no centrosymmetry and are thus inherently piezoelectric. Example are quartz and langasite. Among the piezoelectrics that have no centrosymmetry, there are 10 crystal classes that have a dipole in their unit cell. In the case of piezoelectric, we know that when you apply a pressure, they will develop a dipole. But in the case of these 10 crystal classes, even without applying a pressure, they will have a dipole present in their unit cell. But as the temperature changes, the lattice changes, and as a result, the polarization will change with the temperature. Therefore, they are called pyroelectric. Examples are tourmaline, zinc oxide, aluminum nitride. And among these pyroelectric materials, there are some of them that exhibit a spontaneous polarization, which can be reversed by the application of an electric field. They are called ferroelectrics. Therefore, like a magnet, they will have the magnet as a permanent magnet has got a magnetization. Here, these materials have got a polarization in regions called domains, where they are all aligned spontaneously in a single direction. And there are two types. One is order disorder type, as we can see in the first set. There, dipoles are there, but they are random. At some temperature, they all align. They are called order disorder type. It is a second order phase transition. And in some materials like a barium titanate, there at some time it is ionic displacement that brings in ferroelectricity. At some temperature, in a coordinated fashion, they will displace, giving rise to permanent dipole moment in each unit cell, which get aligned. And the primary observable phenomena when a material undergoes a ferroelectric transition is a rapid increase in dielectric constant. Therefore, what we can see is at this as a temperature from a higher temperature, when you cool down, suddenly the dielectric constant will shoot up, and then it will come down drastically, obeying Curie-Weiss law. That in the above this transition temperature is called Curie temperature. Above that, they follow the Curie-Weiss law. Therefore, this high value of the dielectric constant exhibited by these materials is unique to them, and therefore they are widely used for making capacitors, and or the capacitors made by these materials can be quite small. And this dielectric constant is highly temperature dependent, and in some cases the value is okay. The value of dielectric constant is different at different frequencies. Here we can see that at different frequencies the value of dielectric constant is different. They are displayed in different color, but at all frequencies the transition temperature is same. But in some transition, depending upon the frequency, the transition temperature also will change. They are called relaxer ferroelectrics. Here, in the case of displacive ferroelectrics, which is displacive phase transition or of the first order. Here, if you see this dipole, in the case of barium titanate, see, in the normal cubic state, the titanium is at the center of the octahedra. Barium occupies the corners of the cube, and the oxygens are at the face centers. And the titanium, basically, this is one particular lattice mode. In this, all oxygen octahedra move in one direction, and titanium moves in the other direction. See, this is octahedra. That octahedra made up of oxygen, and titanium is in the middle. This oxygen move in one direction, titanium moves in the other direction. This titanium versus O6 octahedra is a particular polar lattice mode. It is one of the acoustic modes of the barium titanate. And this mode, as we cool down from higher temperature, this mode frequency will keep on coming down. At one temperature, this frequency goes to 0. That means this oxygen octahedra moves in one direction, titanium moves in the other direction, and it remains like that. That particular mode got frozen out. That is the third case. There we get a we get a dipole moment, because the center of gravity of the negative charges and the positive charge given by the titanium ion, there is a distance between them, like in this here. Negative charge here, positive charge here, there is a distance between them. For the dipole moment is polarization is equal to charge q into distance d. Such a dipole moment will develop. And within this therefore titanium, when it displaces, it is in a little off-center position. And now the potential minima is not at the center of the unit cell, but at a little away. That is why, but that is an equally likely position. There are two positions which are equally likely. Not exactly two. There are two, and in fact, it can go into either of the 6 directions: up, down, left. Plus x, plus minus x, plus y, minus y, or plus z, minus z. Therefore, there are 6 equivalent positions. And in one plane, if you plot, the potential curve will be like this. In this, there are 2 equivalent positions. Therefore, this titanium will occupy either this position or this position. And when they displace like that, accordingly, when you apply an electric field, it can shift from this position to this position. And accordingly, the polarization associated will change as per this curve. And as a result, when there is, because of this displaced titanium or the frozen in soft mode, we have a dipole moment, and as a result, we have a total charge developed inside the material. And this is reflected in the capacitance offered by this material. If you use this material as a dielectric in a capacitor, the capacitance is equal to charge divided by voltage, and therefore that is how we get. Since the dielectric constant is large, we know that the capacitance also is equal to epsilon 0 epsilon r in the area divided by d. And therefore, depending upon the area and the separation thickness of the dielectric, we'll get the capacitance, which can be really large. And also, once we apply an electric field, the ions of this the titanium ion, which is at the center of the octahedra, can shift from one potential minima to next potential minima. Accordingly, when we apply, sweep the field from a negative maximum to a positive maximum, polarization will go from one direction to other direction, and when you reverse it, it will come back to another route, because because the early polarization remains. First, that early polarization has to be cancelled, then only it will start polarizing in the other direction. Therefore, we get a hysteresis, very similar to that in the magnetic case. And see, when we reverse the direction of electric field, all of a sudden, all the dipoles won't realign. Instead, in fact, it is something like in some regions, nuclei of domains in the opposite direction will appear, and they will start growing. Like that, only the polarization get reversed. In fact, in the case of magnetism, also it is exactly like that. Therefore, when you apply an electric field, these domains gets formed, and it gets initially nucleated, then they start growing. Finally, all the domains get aligned in the direction of the electric field. Therefore, basically what is happening is domain switching. And therefore, these ferroelectric materials are characterized by their hysteresis loop. And also we know that these they are very similar to the shape, the magnetic hysteresis loop, but possible for the polarization to rotate always along a high symmetry axis. And what we can see is the situation here is very similar to that in the case of maximum. But when it comes to domain walls, these ferroelectric domain walls are abrupt. Here we can see. But in the case of magnetism, the domain walls occupy nearly hundreds of unit cells. And there, basically in the magnetic domain walls, it is a spin orientation change that happens. Therefore, it is slowly they will change the orientation. But in the case of ferroelectric, the change in the orientation of the dipole will be drastic, because they are all governed by the direction of the ionic position displacement in unit cells. Therefore, there they have got a well-defined potential minima and maxima, and therefore they can take only finite directions, finite positions. As a result, in a ferroelectric, the domain walls will be very sharp, but in a magnetic material, it will be quite broad. And it's interesting to note that every ferroelectric material is both a piezoelectric and a pyroelectric. Therefore, multifunctionality is assured in this ferroelectric material. So they exhibit pyroelectricity, they exhibit piezoelectricity, and then exhibit high dielectric constant, exhibit reversible polarization. Therefore, the charges on the surface of this piezoelectric material is polarization to area, which can be used to control magnetism, especially in thin film form. We have multi-layers. These ferroelectrics, because of this piezoelectricity, they will develop a surface charge. This surface charge, can be used for so many purposes. For example, in field effect transistor, that will we see soon, and also for sensing and for energy harvesting. For so many purposes, this property can be used. And many of them, in fact, get more amplified once you go down in dimensions, especially to nanometer scale. Now, the converse piezoelectric effect is also important. In this case, the direct piezoelectric effect, we apply a stress, we get a charge. Here, we apply an electric field, and the material get displaced. And both are equally important. There are size changes when an electric field is applied, and this property is used for making actuators, transducers, that is convert this one form of energy to another, and piezo force microscopy, and straintronics. That is in nanoelectronics, it is one of the important area where material properties are being manipulated by introducing strain in a controlled fashion. Because here, in a piezoelectric, by applying electric field, we are able to control the dimension that will create stress, and that is very important to manipulate various properties in the various properties, especially to small dimensions. That becomes important in the nanometer scale. For example, the piezoelectric character can be used to the piezoelectric property of a ferroelectric can be used to image a ferroelectric domain. For example, in the case of an atomic force microscope, and further be a small cantilever, as it approaches the surface, the van der Waals forces takes over. That will pull the cantilever close to the surface. As a result, if I send a laser beam to this cantilever, it will get reflected. Even the small change in the position of the cantilever result in a large deflection in the laser beam, which is directed to its surface. Therefore, laser beam comes like that, be reflected like that, and therefore, in addition to the van der Waals force, if there is a ferroelectric domain there, for example, a polarization is sitting there. If the polarization is in this direction, this cantilever will experience one type of force. If the polarization in the opposite direction, it will be oppositing exactly opposite kind of force it will experience. Therefore, in one case it may move up, the other case it may move down, and as a result, and instead of positive polarization here, if it is negative here, instead of going up, it will go down like this. Therefore, by moving this cantilever over the surface of it, of the ferroelectric, or scanning the surface by using this cantilever, we will be able to map how the underlying forces are. Depending upon which way the laser beam moves, okay, we can find out the force is up or down, or the polarization there is up or down. And therefore, by mapping like that, we'll get images like that. That is called piezo force microscopy. In fact, to study piezoelectricity in a nanometer scale, this is a very effective tool, because here the solution can be in tens of nanometers. And okay, in this particular case, it is a barium titanate over lanthanum tungsten manganate. That in this kind of multi-layers, we get these domain patterns like this. And not only that, we can map the domain pattern by applying a voltage through the cantilever. We can change the domain orientation. Those things are possible. Therefore, the piezoelectric effect enables this mapping of these domains at a nanometer scale using this piezo force microscopy. Not only that, we can reverse the domain direction by applying a voltage to the cantilever in different region. Therefore, as a result, we can do some amount of nano engineering using a piezo force microscope. Therefore, this is what is another example. Multifunctionality of a material gives rise to a number of things. Or in fact, this is being used in this property is being used in non-volatile memories. In fact, if the polarization is arranged in one particular direction, till we apply field in the opposite direction, it will remain like that. Therefore, unlike other volatile memory, this memory will remain. Therefore, for non-volatile memory, these properties are used, and in nanometer scale, in fact, even AFM can do this read and writing, and there are other techniques for okay, in different memories, the techniques used for reading and writing is different. But what I'm saying, I'm just showing how atomic force microscope does that. Now, the question is, these ferroelectrics, they appear in crystals, in ceramic form, as a polycrystalline material, and also, but primarily they are all used in thin films. Now, the question is, why thin films? The shortcomings of bulk ferroelectrics is strong dependence on the properties on temperature and microstructure. The necessity of integration with the semiconductors and metals, that is the key for integrated electrons. The demands for the devices, device miniaturization, the material cost, energy, and money for processing, all these things looks for a thin film form of the material. All this with thin films, many of this can be overcome. But thin films properties depend on the method of preparation, which need extensive optimization. Thin film properties could be different from bulk. That is important. Just because a material offers a particular property in the bulk form, doesn't mean that in thin film form they will exhibit the same property. Property can be different. Sometimes it's advantage, sometimes that depends on which way we look at it. Often it leads to different values for properties that can be optimized. Therefore, it is the size effect of the material plus the substrate effect, because a thin film always comes with a substrate. Therefore, the size effect comes into the picture, plus the bonding of the film to the substrate. That interface plays a very major role. Now, some of the example applications of ferroelectrics are they are used in non-volatile memory, as I mentioned. By using their high dielectric constant, they are used in dynamic random access memories. Then their dielectric constant is a function of the applied bias field. Using that, they are used in tunable microwave devices. In fact, that's the area in which I am concentrating. And then they are used in pyroelectric detectors and sensors, and then piezoelectric sensors, actuators, and microelectromechanical systems, capacitors, energy harvesting, and energy storage. These are some of the primary applications. For example, this is a familiar site we have. We see a debit card, credit card, this all kinds of smart cards nowadays we see, there we see a small chip. In fact, inside that, the memory is of generally made of FERAM, ferroelectric memory. And there, as I mentioned, whatever data we store it there remain unerased. That is why for such a non-volatile memory, these piezoelectrics are used. There, the integration density is not very high, but the advantage is they are simple and they are non-volatile because of the nature of the these ferroelectrics. Then, by making use of the high dielectric constant of these materials, this the capacitors made with these materials will occupy a very small area, and as a result, in dynamic random access memory, in fact, these small capacitors yielded by these materials are heavily used. And this in communication area, it is quite important that this is tunable microwave devices. That is, this as you can see here, the dielectric constant is a function of the electric field, and the electrical length of a material depends upon the dielectric constant. Therefore, if you change the bias field, the dielectric constant will change. That means if you change the bias field, the capacitance will change. Therefore, such a tunable capacitor, we know it as a varactor. Varactors are, as we know it, are reverse bias diodes. They are good at low frequencies, but at higher frequencies, especially in the micro frequency range, they become very lossy. That is why people look for alternatives. And one way is to use ferrite, but to tune it, we need a magnetic field. But that is bulky. But another method is to go for these micro electromechanical systems. There are advantages and disadvantages both are there. Another competing approach is to use a ferroelectric capacitor and subject it to a bias field. Then we'll get a tunable capacitor. Now we know that the resonant frequency of an LCR circuit depends only on two factors: LC. In fact, LC and R. R is basically a nuisance. That they will try to keep the R as minimum as possible. Then only two elements, that is L and C. And in the nanometer world, inductors are not very attractive because very difficult to miniaturize them. But therefore, when it comes to that, mostly the choice is narrowing down to capacitors. And when it comes to capacitors, as I mentioned, dielectric, these ferroelectrics are quite good. And if we can tune the dielectric constant by applying a bias field, we get a variable C. Once you have variable C, the resonant frequency also becomes variable. Once you have a variable frequency response, the entire high frequency circuit becomes tunable. In fact, in the 5G, the evolving 5G technology, these tunable circuits play a very key role. And in this mobile world, they come in the form of filters, oscillators, delay lines, phase shifters, and in all these things, these ferroelectric capacitors are increasingly playing a major role. And they are okay in our normal usage. They are coming up in 5G, but otherwise there are all kinds of technologies which are mostly used in defense, especially in radar, electronic warfare, in satellites, and in various mostly in defense and in so many other strategic sectors. These tunable micro devices play a very important role. In fact, as a result, it is the defense and space which mostly funds our work here. And another one is this pyroelectric sensors. In fact, as I mentioned, all the ferroelectrics are pyroelectrics. And of course, therefore, a small temperature variation, a pyroelectric material will be able to detect. And as a result, for night vision sensing, they can be used. Therefore, these are all images using a night vision camera. They all use this pyroelectric detectors. Of course, there are semiconductor detectors are also there, and pyroelectrics of different kinds are there. But what I'm saying is this ferroelectrics, they being pyroelectrics, some of them optimized for this application give very good response, and that is a little easier way to achieve this night vision sensing. That is in fact is a very important area in so many areas, so many fields. And nowadays, even our whenever we get into a building now, people check our temperature, and there also basically it is a pyroelectric sensor they use. Again, different technologies are there, and each handheld device will be using different technology. But they are all pyroelectric sensing of one method or other method, but the simplest and direct the conversion of change in temperature to electricity comes through pyroelectric effect. That ferroelectrics are offered. Then we have this piezoelectric being operated in so many applications. For example, these loudspeakers of good quality, they make use of, they receive the signal, electrical signal, and convert into sound signal by using a piezoelectric transducer. And also in our the gas lighter which we use in to start fire in a gas stove, that inside also there's a piezoelectric crystal. Therefore, when you press it, it will create a spark. That's also by piezoelectric effect. And of course, in the case of sonar, you know very well that they use this ultrasonic waves, and these ultrasonic waves are also generated using piezoelectrics. Therefore, when it comes to underwater, the way radar is important for Air Force, this sonar is important for Navy. When it comes to sonar, in fact, the main transducer is piezoelectrics. And this I was mentioning some time back. In fact, this property of a ferroelectric to create a charge, to create a surface charge is very important, and that is nowadays being used in transistors. For example, in a field effect transistor, what we can see is, see that if you use that ferroelectric layer on the channel, on the surface of the channel, and if you apply voltage, see we will have if the positive charges are all aligned on top of the on the surface of the channel, in fact they will be able to attract the charge carriers towards that. So we get a high conducting channel here. But in the case, if you reverse the direction of the electric field here, then they will be repelling. There will be negative charge here. Therefore, they will be repelling the charge carriers away from here. Therefore, it becomes a depletion peak. Therefore, in fact, this ferroelectrics, the built-in electric field offered by the permanent dipoles inside a ferroelectric can be used for controlling the charge carrier concentration within the channel of an active device. And like in standard FET, the gate voltage locally decreases or increases the carrier density. So this is something which is being right now right now the channel length is around 7 nanometer for the present technology. They are trying to push it down to 3 nanometer. In that dimension ranges, in fact, these properties become quite important. Now, briefly, I'll mention about multiferroics. In fact, ferroelectrics themselves gives multifunctionality. But when it comes to multiferroics, in fact, it is one step further. The electric and magnetic ordering in solids are usually considered separately. Effects such as ferroelectricity are caused by charges, while magnetism is caused by spins. And however, in a few cases, these two orders are strongly coupled. If this is the case, then it may occur that using an electric field, we can introduce a finite magnetization M. It's a cross coupling. Using a magnetic field H, we can generate a finite electric polarization P. That if you have ultimately the idea is if we can control magnetism using electric field, in fact there are specific advantages. I'll come to that. And in fact, this there are a few cases where, for example, in the type 1 case, the two phenomena of polarization and magnetization occur for different reasons. But there is only a weak coupling between them. They occur in the same material, but for different reasons. There is not much of a strong coupling. That is type 1. Type 2, for both orders are deeply intercoupled. But in reality, the material that exhibit that, their the critical temperatures are too small. Therefore, applications-wise, they are not able to come up so far much. But from the scientific point of view, they are the most interesting. But their critical transition temperatures are very small, and once materials comes up with, eventually if materials comes up with a high transition temperature, their application definitely is going to be high. Therefore, but in the absence of such natural materials, people are trying to achieve this cross coupling through multi layers of magnetic materials and ferroelectrics. They are called magnetoelectrics. For example, ultimately, we have this electric field, magnetic field, and the mechanical stress. These three, this ferroelectrics response to electric field, magnetic materials response to magnetic field. Likewise, there is an equivalent this mechanical response through mechanical stress that they are called ferroelastic. and now we are looking at the cross coupling between them. When if that is what we see is in a ferroelectric, we have polarization, and in a case of magnetic material, we have magnetization, and in a ferroelastic, we have a spontaneous strain. And now the question is, if we have a cross coupling, that is, we have three these kind of orders. One is ferroelectricity, ferromagnetism, another one is ferroelectricity. Suppose if one system exhibited two of them, any two of them, then we call them as multiferroic. And we basically, therefore, we look for is there any change in magnetization when you change the electric field, or if there is a change in strain when you change the this is okay. There's a piezoelectric effect also. We should not get confused with that. In other words, if there is any change in polarization when you apply a magnetic field, this kind of cross coupling. Therefore, magnetoelectric effect means change in magnetization with the change in electric field, or change in polarization with respect to change in magnetic field. And as a result, we have this kind of situation. There are pure ferromagnetic, then pure ferroelectric, and there is some area where there is overlap between them, that is multiferroic. And then there is magnetically polarizable materials, that is a superset. And like we have electrically polarizable materials. And here we have another subset called magnetoelectric. And why these naturally occurring multiferroics are few. The reason is, see, the criteria for magnetism and ferroelectricity are slightly different. See, uncompensated spins from magnetic moments are responsible for these magnetic properties. They require a partially filled dishes. But when it comes to ferroelectricity, they require, in fact, unfilled. This magnetic property requires partially filled dishes. That leads to spin ordering, different kind of spin ordering and exchange interactions. Therefore, partially filled d orbitals leads to this magnetism. But this ferroelectricity often develops because of for example, in the case of barium titanate, a covalency develops between the central ion and oxyl ion. And for that covalency to develop, this d orbital should be free. That is why the basic chemistry that gives rise to these two phenomena are different. That is why in same system it's difficult to observe both of them easily. Therefore, first of all, why so much effort to achieve magnetoelectrics? See, certain functions like a non-reciprocity can be achieved easily by magnetism. That is, a material behave in one way when the wave propagates through it in one direction, and it will behave in a different way when the wave reflects and comes back in the opposite direction. Therefore, in such material, we can separate out the ongoing wave from the reflected wave. But to control it, we need a magnet. Because this non-reciprocity is better observed by in magnetic materials. And to control it, we need a magnet, which cannot be miniaturized. But a capacitor can be miniaturized. That's the key. If we can manipulate magnetism using a capacitor structure, then it becomes integrated with the nanoelectronics. So it is so far not possible with the multiferroics, but possible with the magnetoelectrics. Also, at nanometer thickness, under favorable conditions, the best magnetic and ferroelectric material layers can be made to interact mostly through strain, leading to excellent control of magnetoelectric properties. That is, we will have basically we will have one layer of magnetic material, another layer of this ferroelectric material. In the case of ferroelectric material, when you apply an electric field, it will, because of piezoelectricity, will develop a strain. That strain will induce a magnetization in a piezomagnetic material. That way, indirectly coupled through strain, the applied electric field will be able to induce a change in magnetization. In fact, that kind of interaction is the one which is most important. And this leads to a whole lot of new possibilities like magnet-free circulators, which is quite important for quantum computing, the efficient electromagnetic absorbers, because these materials have both high permeability and permittivity, one coming from the magnetic route, other one coming through the ferroelectric route. Then widely tunable microwave devices which give confinement through higher permittivity and permeability, like resonators, filters, phase shifters, and delay lines. Then voltage tunable inductors. As I mentioned, the inductors themselves is fabricating is a little difficult in the nanometer scale. And if you fabricate them, if you want to tune it using a magnetic field, again, miniaturizing a magnetic is difficult. But if you can control that inductor using voltage, using this magnetoelectric effect, then it becomes a tunable inductor. That is quite important. Then acoustically actuated converse magnetoelectric antenna. See, basically, and antenna where the signal comes as a electrical signal, mechanical signal, and that will lead to electrical oscillations that will propagate as a very low frequency. Then multi-state memories, electrical reading of memories, then electrical, instead of magnetic reading, electrical reading of memories, electrical controls in spintronics, memristors, actuators, then ultra-sensitive magnetic field sensor, which is able to sense neuron activities in brain, energy harvesting, using nanoscale power converters, voltage tunable ferromagnetic resonance, electrical control of magnetic restriction, sensors, all these things are possible with the magnetoelectrics. That is why these multifunctionalities are being sought after in a great way. And by the way, a few multiferroics are available naturally. They were detected to be magnetoelectrics only recently, but they are all naturally occurring crystals. Now, the limiting factors in simultaneous existence of ferroelectricity and ferromagnetism. In fact, there are a few cases for a few reasons why these phenomena don't appear simultaneously. I will skip that because time is we are only. And as I mentioned, we have in magnetoelectric effect, we have a strain is the intermediary. When you apply an electric field, it will create strain. That strain is transferred to the piezomagnetite material. It appears in both ways. In some cases, we apply a magnetic field. In other case, we apply electric field. In either case, the intermediary is the strain. Therefore, it is a strain-mediated transfer from electrical phenomena to magnetic phenomena. See, at interfaces, often the phenomena don't go by what is there on either side, especially in the nanometer scale. For example, interface between two insulators, the interface can be metal. The interface between two insulators can be a superconductor. And in general, the properties of the ensemble can be drastically different from the properties of the individual building blocks. Therefore, in fact, that is an exotic area of the solid state physics, which is developing rapidly at present. That requires materials to be developed in nanometer scale. And if you make it thin film should be of around less than 10 nanometer scale. Then these kind of interfaces we develop. And there, the interface properties can be drastically different from the properties of the either side of the multilayer. And that is where right now a lot of experimental work is going on, a lot of theory is going on, a lot of new phenomena is coming. And just quickly to say that, in fact, when we go to nanometer scale, not only through multi-layer thin films, okay, these properties are possible through multi-layer thin films. One layer of ferroelectric, another layer of piezomagnetite material. But that need not be the case all the time. We can have a granular ferroelectric embedded in a magnetic material, or one material grown as nanowires embedded in another phase of the material. One can be ferroelectric, other can be piezomagnetite. And this is one is granular. In the other case, it can be multi layers of thin films. One layer of ferroelectric, other layer of piezomagnetite, like that. In this case, see, we can see these barium titanate nanocrystallites are embedded in the matrix of cobalt ferrite. This structure is possible. And by the way, many of these things to prepare that, we need very exotic techniques and facilities. But there are very simple techniques like electrophoretic deposition. That requires, this is basically a modified electrochemical bath. There, it is possible to get controlled particle sizes in nanometer scale, and we can deposit them in an arranged fashion. And it is called EPD, electrophoretic deposition. And this can be set up even in a college. Okay, of course, generally depositing them and making them is generally not very difficult. The difficulty is in observing them. That requires things like transmission electron microscope and okay, to some extent, then laser raman spectroscopy will help. And it is a characterization that is difficult, but making them, we can have even simple electrophoretic deposition, for which facilities are not very difficult. Okay, briefly now I'll explain what we are doing. In fact, this is our we make these ferroelectrics, piezoelectrics, and now we are making multi-layers of we make magnetoelectrics by multi-layer route. And for that, we make use primarily a pulse laser deposition. We use an excimer laser and an NDA laser for depositing thin films of these materials, especially for making multi-layers. And this is XML laser, and this is the Nd:YAG laser, which gives wavelength at these 4 frequencies. And this is a PLD chamber. We have 3 of them. 3 chambers we use with these 2 lasers. And one of them is an ultra high vacuum chamber with a load lock. And in one system, we use laser rastering and substrate rotation simultaneously. And another technique we use is RF magnetron sputtering that can make thin films of both insulators and conductors. This is the clean room which we use for fabricating devices out of the thin films that we make. Even for microwave frequency range measurements, we need patterned structure to make these patterned structures, and for making various devices. Mostly, as I mentioned, we make tunable microwave devices using these ferroelectric or magnetoelectric layers. For that, we use the facilities in this clean room. And in fact, our lab concentrates on measurement of materials and the properties in the microwave frequency range. Materials in liquid form, powder form, thin film form, and bulk form. We make the samples, and we measure the properties in the microwave frequency range by various methods. Especially for thin films, we need a pattern structure that we use this. This is a vector network analyzer that is interfaced with the probe station. In the probe station, we use this kind of patterned structures. That patterned structures is observed through a microscope, and through the microscope, we will land these probes. And with that, we will measure the properties of this material. Oh, see, the test structures are over the material layer. See, this is a substrate over which there is a thin film, above which we have put the test structure. And the test structure properties we are probing through this probe station, that is measured using vector network analyzer. That is an on-wafer measurement system. I'll just briefly explain how this piece multifunctionality helps. For example, in the case of electromagnetic wave at wavelength frequency of 3 gigahertz, electromagnetic wavelength is 10 centimeter. Therefore, if you want to make any device with that, in fact, the dimension comes down by the factor of root of epsilon r, because wavelength inside the material is free space wavelength divided by square root of epsilon permittivity. That much it will come down, but still that will not be that small. It will be a factor. If the dialectic is 36, it will come down by a factor of 6. Still, the wavelength will be around 1.5 centimeter. But for acoustic waves, for a frequency of 3 gigahertz, since the velocity is 5 order of magnitude lower, the wavelength comes to 1 micrometer. Therefore, if you want to miniaturize a device in the microwave frequency range, especially a resonator, it is better to use an electroacoustic conversion. That is done using a piezoelectric film. There, because the wavelength at the same frequency is only 1 micrometer, device size automatically comes down. In fact, if you have a resonator made with this electroacoustic transduction, and if you have a high Q, in fact, such microwave resonators are useful for is very important for filtering and other operations in 4G and 5G technology, for gas sensing, other mass detection, and for IR sensing, explosive detection, fracture detection structures, pressure sensor, accelerometer. In so many applications, these high Q, these miniaturized resonators are important. Therefore, in many of these tunable microwave devices, the first step is a tunable capacitor. In fact, this is the pattern of the tunable capacitor which we have developed, which is fabricated. This is a fabricated structure. The capacitor is only here, but this is the capacitor that is embedded here. This is a test structure. However, test structure is much bigger. This is an interdigitated capacitor fabricated in our lab. See, this is in the absence of a field, this is the value of the capacitance as a function of frequency. When you apply a bias field, the capacitance comes down. That is what is tuning. And this is a circular patch capacitor. And here using that, this is again fabricated. And here again, when we measure without any bias field, the dielectric constant varies with frequency like this. When you apply a bias field, it comes down like this. That is tuning. And this is with respect to frequency, the capacitance changes like this. With the 0 volt, this is the capacitance. With the 2 volt, this is the 4 volt, 6 volt, 8 volt, 10 volt. With the 10 volt, capacitance comes down by around 50%. Therefore, this is a ferroelectric reactor measured in the gigahertz range. There, in fact, semiconductor ferroelectric works better than semiconductor. And we made some high overtone bulk acoustic resonators using this paraelectric barium strontium titanate thin film. and these are the results of it, and this is a device structure, and this is a schematics of it, and top electrode, and then barium junction titanate, bottom layer. This is a thin film. All of these are all thin films. This is a substrate. This is a substrate. All other things are thin film layers. When we measure the properties of it, it is like this. We get a large number of periodic resonances. Now, what we found, in fact, we want to see whether we can use it as a sensor in some simple way. For that, on the back side of it, we also substrate, we deposited a polymer called SU8. In fact, result is quite interesting. And in fact, for different thicknesses, see, for 2.1 micron thickness of the SU8 layer coated on the back side, we get to this kind of a response. When the thickness is increased, response is changing like that. And what we found is that from this change, it is possible for us to measure the acoustic velocity, acoustic impedance, and acoustic loss. Like that, a number of these electroacoustic parameters of the material which we have coated, we are able to derive from this observed variation. And in fact, it is a new result. And we found not only that, we found that on that polymer, if we have absorbed some trace element, it is sensitive enough to highlight that also. Therefore, it can be used as a sensor also. This structure can be used as a medium for studying the properties of the coated layer, and also as a sensor. In fact, this is accepted for publication in IEEE transactions on ultrasonics, ferroelectrics, and frequency control. Only last week. And this is, in fact, another interesting physics. There a paraelectric material, barium junction titanate. With that, when we make this high overtone bulk acoustic resonator, in fact, initially there is no response, no resonance. When you apply a bias field, the response starts. That is because when you apply a bias field, if field-induced paraelectric to ferroelectric transition happens. Therefore, as we increase the bias field, see the resonance grows. So, in fact, it is, we know that paraelectric can be made to ferroelectric by applying a bias field. This is a demonstration of it using the same resonator. These are some of the other devices which we fabricate in the lab. Coupler waveguide based bandstop filter, bandpass filter, and bandstop filter, and this tunable microwave bandpass filter using thin film BST varactor. These devices using these thin film based varactors. See, first we make the varactor, then using this varactor we make this kind of integrated device like a tunable filters, etc. But with that, okay, I have already overshot the time. Sorry. In summary, I would say, okay, multifunctionality through materials and phenomena are important for emerging nanoelectronics. Ferroelectrics, multiferroics, and magnetoelectrics are highly suited for various cross-coupled phenomena. Ferroelectrics are important as they are multifunctional materials. They exhibit pyroelectricity and piezoelectricity along with reversible polarizability. Multiferroics offer ordering and magnetization and electric polarization in one material. Nanometer range multi-layers offer the best coupling, and hence they are preferred for various applications. In multi-layer thin films, wide range of material and hence parameter selection choice are available. Device applications with the ferroelectrics are many, and the multifunctionality of ferroelectric thin films facilitate realization of microwave resonators and tunable micro devices. And tunable micro devices are being fabricated at University of Hyderabad with ferroelectric thin films. So thank you for your attention.
Thank you, sir.
Yes.
Before moving to the question and answer session, let me remind of the feedback form, which will be posted shortly in the chat box. Kindly, the participants fill it for your attendance and receiving the certificate. Now, I am moving on to the question and answer session. We have a question from Gobiga G. Nair. She says that the session was very informative, and she wants to know if we use the multiferroic example BFO for an EM absorption, how can we modify its absorption efficiency, whether by doping it with other materials or by changing BI-FE ratio or changing any other parameter? Sir, have you got the question?
Yes, yes. In fact, if our primary objective is to get a very good electromagnetic absorption, bismuth ferrite may not be the best material. The better to go for a composite where we have a very good ferrimagnetic property and very good ferroelectric property. But in fact, bismuth ferrite is one material where both phenomena exist, but both are weak. But if EM absorption is the primary objective, better go for either multi-layer or a composite of a best ferrite and the best ferroelectric. Within bismuth ferrite, if you want to go for absorption, there are a number of methods. One is you increase the defects. And in fact, we had to do a systematic experimentation. Generally, any defects will increase absorption. And making it a low loss is more difficult. Making it a more lossy means any disturbance in the order is fine. Therefore, we can try both in the absorption, the A site and B site. In fact, there are more to it. I think my email ID, please ask the organizers, they will give you, and you can write to me. I think we can discuss more on that. Because what I'm saying is, there is more to it. Therefore, it is better to have a detailed discussion. Therefore, please take my email ID and write to me. I'll get back.
Okay. The next question. Vidya Rajan, she asks, what is the exact difference in properties of 2D ferromagnetic crystal and ferromagnetic thin films?
In ferromagnetic thin films, basically many of the properties of the bulk, in a sense, we still expect in a ferromagnetic thin film. Ferromagnetic thin film, in a sense, is basically an extension of the bulk ferromagnet. But when it comes to 2D these ferromagnetic materials, often their 3D version is not there. They are born as 2D material, they exist as 2D material. If you try to make them as a 3D material, they may not exhibit the same property. That is of a general statement, but we have to look particularly into the particular case, especially particularly about ferrine, I don't know. But there are many polymers and all, they exhibit this ferromagnetism in their 2D structure. If you change the structure, their properties will change. But when it comes to, when you say ferromagnetic thin film, basically many of the properties exhibited by a bulk ferromagnet we still expect in a slightly modified form. The property is fundamentally same, it is only an extension of what is being expected, exhibited in the bulk form.
Okay. Next question is from Arun Kumar sir. He says that the talk was very informative, and his question is, can piezoelectric materials be used for microwave dielectric tunable applications?
See this, as I mentioned, if it is only a piezoelectric, like aluminum nitride or zinc oxide, it is fixed. We cannot tune it. If it is a piezoelectric coming from the ferroelectric route, like a barium titanate or PZT, there, in fact, we can tune their properties by electric field. There, not only the ferroelectric properties will change, but the piezoelectric properties also will change. Therefore, again, the answer is yes, provided it is a piezoelectric coming from the ferroelectric route. Then its microwave properties can be tuned.
Okay. The next question is from Samrajan sir. He asks, can we control the dimension of layer formed in electrophoretic deposition?
Yes. Electrophoretic deposition is highly controllable only. In fact, I am not the expert in that. In fact, my student, Dr. Sudhindran, he is now in Kerala Varma College, Thrissur. He is working on that. In fact, if interested students, participants can write to me, I will give his email ID. You can interact with it. But in fact, it is a simple and easier technique which can be set up in a college, and it is controllable. With that, so many applications are coming up also.
Okay, only these many questions are posted in the chat box. If any other participant wants to ask any question, they can directly unmute their mic and speak on. It can be anything, like any personal question, like about CMS or something when sir was studying here, anything can be asked. So if you want to ask personally, you can unmute your mic and ask.
Yes, sir, we all want to hear that your experiences with CMS. Can you share a few minutes for that?
Yes, sure. In fact, basically, in fact, our times are quite different. In fact, many of our experiences that time may not be relevant now. See, at that time, we didn't have internet, we didn't have mobile phone. And about at that time, Kerala was like a different country. See, once we, even when you come out of Kerala, the situation we used to find as quite different. Nowadays, it is not so. We are in a global village. And therefore, at that time, getting qualifying through a national test and coming out was a little, I found it a little difficult. But of course, in fact, whatever book, to tell the truth, in fact, I took a lot of books even after my MSc years from the college library. So by reading them, reading all those, and of course, I returned all of them. Then some seniors helped me to take some books. But what I want to say is, by reading all those books, in fact, it took another 2 years for me to get qualified in NET. And once we qualified NET, in fact, we are in the All India domain. But what I'm saying is, see, at that time, again, the college atmosphere is different. We have in the faculty, we have only one faculty who are having PhD, but there are other teachers who, for example, like Mathis sir, and they all learned by themselves digital electronics and really gave us the best. And in fact, Rajan sir also did a lot. In fact, even though the years after my MSc, in fact, especially the Sudarshan Center, that initiative he started and all was really encouraging. And those things, and as I mentioned, there was a 2-year gap between me getting this NET and this MSc. Therefore, during that time, in fact, the ecosystem of Siemens College really helped through the Sudarshan Center, through involvement of people like people who are interested in the subject even after our MSc days, through books, through interactions, they all really helped. Then during the college days, in fact, what I felt is the freedom which we enjoyed, that also really helped. But of course, that freedom at that time may not be the right way to exercise. For example, at that time, we have only yearly exam. No semester system, no periodical examination. That in fact put a lot of stress on us. For example, the whole year you have to wait for finally to get one set of exam, which will all come in 1 week. But compared to that, now I think because with the semester system and the periodical assessment, the load is distributed. I would say in those days, load was something like a delta function. Now it is somewhat distributed. Therefore, now I feel that it is more livable than those days. And also we have more teachers with, in fact, PhD. That means they have a little, all of them have research exposure. And now the availability of internet is there. And not only that, in fact, now the opportunities are not limited to India. Now the opportunities are around the world. In fact, to tell the truth, nowadays getting admission in for PhD in IISc or the first 5 IITs or some of the leading institutions in India, in TFR and things like that, is much more difficult than getting admission for PhD in Europe and in many other countries. Therefore, nowadays everybody is hunting for young people, and they are more available mostly in India. Therefore, they are available around therefore opportunities are now available around the world. Only thing is, by the time you complete MSc, they expect you to have a little practical understanding also. For example, if you are able to publish a paper, at least within MSc or after MSc, and then in fact you are in the international domain. These kind of opportunities were not there early, but now it is there. So earlier we felt a lot of isolation by being in Kottayam compared to those who are coming up in cities. But now I feel that isolation factor is gone, because thanks to internet and the exposure of our faculty. And therefore, what I felt is now this is a global village, opportunities are available around the world, and good young people are in great demand everywhere in the world. And therefore, skill set, if you develop now, it will be really, you will get returns. And facilities wise also, in fact, the country facilities are increasing, but it can be a little more faster. But still, the young aspirants are concerned, they need not have to, they can look for the best facilities available anywhere in the world. In fact, that is again another aspect. Nowadays, for example, suppose you make the materials by EPD. that can be done in a college. You can have collaboration with any institution around the world. Nowadays, again, thanks to internet, you can identify who have the facility. Write to them, I have this kind of material with this kind of problem, and can we have collaboration? In fact, entering into collaboration is not very difficult, provided you have the correct understanding and correct problem. And if you pose a problem properly and make the samples with some good innovative idea, in fact, any people with the good facilities will jump in. Therefore, understanding is more important. That in a college environment, developing that understanding, in fact, is easy, because you don't have so much of pressure to get so much funding, so many things. Have a set of limited facilities and concentrate fully into it, and look at all the possibilities that are possible with what you are doing, especially in sample preparation, type of sample, type of multi-layer, or type of specific application which you have in mind. If that things are done properly, because that is the one which takes time. And after that, doing the more specialized characterization in association with leading centers anywhere in the world is not very difficult. Therefore, I think now anybody who is really interested in the work can do good work from anywhere in the world. Absolutely no problem. Therefore, those who are interested, it is time to really take life more seriously. By the way, our university has got a center called NRC, Networking Resource Center. It is given by UGC to facilitate this kind of work. There, the idea is a student or faculty can join NRC as an associate, and basically the same thing. In fact, the faculty will help, is supposed to direct them how to direct their work towards a more focused manner, and then help them to make the sample in the respective places, or as much as possible make the preparation facility in our place if required. For that, when funding is available, travel support and accommodation will be provided, and then whatever measurement facilities are available, that will be made available to them. And further, there is a UGC funded scheme called Networking Resource Center. If anybody is interested, there is a separate website for that. They can look at the NRC website at University of Hyderabad and make use of it. This kind of NRCs are there in, I think, a few other centers also. And also similar arrangement is there with the Department of Atomic Energy called Inter-University Consortium for University Facilities. They have various centers in different parts of the country. They also help students like this.
Okay, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. A few more questions have popped up. Can I just ask?
Yes, please.
Yeah, okay. Hari sir is asking. He's asking you to just comment on the 2D ferromagnetic crystal. They are weak van der Waals layered systems where a typical ferromagnetic thin film might have significant interlayer interactions.
That's very good. Thank you. Thank you, Dr. Hari. In fact, that is an area which is I'm not directly working on that. In fact, thank you, Hari, for intervening and giving this good input. Thank you.
Okay, Tessie Akhil, she asked, what may be the possible reasons for the increase or decrease of dielectric constant by the application of magnetic field in multiferroic composites?
See that decrease of dielectric constant. See, basically, an increased dielectric constant comes from an increased ferroelectric nature. What is ferroelectric nature? Dipoles becoming more polarizable. That polarizability now that increased polarizability comes in through in this case it is see, when you apply a magnetic field, basically that means one layer should be magnetostrictive. That means they with the change in magnetic field strength, the strain changes. Through the strain, the coupling happens into the ferroelectric or piezoelectric layer. There, with the strain, with the change in strain, the polarization changes, and rate of change of polarization with the electric field is dielectric constant. So, with the more changing strain, more the polarization change. Therefore, more dielectric constant change. So, dielectric constant is rate of change of polarization with electric field. So, with the more changing polarization with electric field, the electric constant will change. That happens through variation in strain. That strain comes through piezo-magnetic layer. It is a strain-mediated magnetoelectric coupling. That is one case. There are other cases also. There are charge-mediated. That's a totally separate case.
I hope the questions are over. Okay, so let's move on to the concluding remarks. Let me conclude today's session. We started with a prayer and the welcome by our head of the department, Renu Jacob, and our principal, Joshua sir. He inaugurated the webinar series. We had a wonderful session by James Raju sir, where he gave an insight upon the behavior of ferroelectric materials and how they are multifunctional in non-volatile RAMs, capacitors, pyroelectric detectors, etc. He also talked about multiferroics and the new possibilities like multi-state memories, actuators, etc. Sir also brushed upon the tunable microwave devices, the various facilities in his lab, and whatever work he has done. The talk was very useful as it helped in giving the knowledge of how different windows of research can be opened up from a single domain. Thank you very much, sir. Let me call Megha J of 2nd MSc Physics to deliver the vote of thanks.
A warm good morning to all. One of the biggest casualties of the COVID-19 pandemic and the resultant lockdown has been institutionalized education. And this has to give the way for online classrooms. Since the world has been passing through such a challenging situation, it is very relevant to conduct such webinar series. I would like to thank the Department of Physics to conduct such programs. On behalf of Department of Physics, CMS College, Kottayam, I take this opportunity to propose the vote of thanks to those who have directly and indirectly contributed to this webinar. First of all, I would like to thank the Honorable Principal of CMS College, Kottayam, Dr. Varghese C. Joshua, who graced us with his presence and guidance. Thank you, sir, for sharing your words of wisdom with us. At the outset, I thank our chief guest and resource person, Dr. K.C. James, Professor, School of Physics, University of Hyderabad. We are really enlightened with your knowledge and presence. I would like to thank our HOD, Dr. Renu Jacob, for her enthusiastic support and guidance. A special thanks to the organizing committee, the Alumni Association of Department of Physics, teaching and non-teaching staff for their unflinching support and coordination. Last but not the least, I would like to thank all the students for their active participation. Once again, thank you.
Okay, thank you, James sir, for such a wonderful session. And also I thank everyone present here, and also let's meet again tomorrow for the webinar on application of nanomaterials for theranostics by Dr. D. Shakti Kumar sir from Toyo University, Japan. Thank you once again.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. Thank you, Shakti, Mohan Jacob, and Hari for joining from around the globe.
You're welcome.
Hello, Dr. Tejal.
Hello, sir. Hari is also here, no?
Yes. I think he is still there, or he's left. Huh?
I think he
He
left.
was there, he left, I suppose.
It must be really late there.
Yeah.
Right.
Do you remember me, sir? Do you remember seeing me somewhere? Actually, last November, I did a refresher course in University of Hyderabad.
Okay.
Experimental physics. Myself and Arun Kumar, sir. We came and met you in your lab. We had a session on microwaves.
Okay. I think sometime after that we in the NRC we met, or
no, I didn't come after that.
Okay.
No.
Okay. All right. Anyway, I think the college is seen. There is no comparison between our time and the present time, and with the The opportunities now and then is also different, and the competition level is different, and exposure now is also different. But in our case, basically, since we are in the academic world, we are keep changing with the changes. Therefore, now what is relevant in the present scene, it is quite clear. Therefore, what I'm saying is, one thing what I would like to say is many of the earlier time impediments are not there now. Now situation is much better. But of course, the only thing is many people are becoming more aware of the opportunities. Therefore, competition is only increasing. Okay, nowadays, okay, another major point which is earlier going abroad and all used to be very difficult. But nowadays, in fact, students, for them, every country is safe before them. They apply everywhere. And in fact, various good opportunities are coming up also. But within India, for pure physics, the opportunities, in fact, challenges are still there. Of course, academics are there, but I hope some major changes can happen, mainly because this defense production has now gone into the private sector. Because that is, because many of these technologies which are talking about, only defense people use it. For example, I mentioned about this application, the tunable micro devices. One major user is defense. After that, 5G. The problem related to the 5G is those industries, related industries, has not taken off in India so far. Therefore, the only other people is defense. If they get into if the defense production, as long as it is in a closed this government sector, the opportunities will be very less, because things will go at a slow pace. But once they are in the once the private players are allowed in these sectors, these high tech industries are bound to come. I feel that in India, this is a major factor which will bring changes in future. Therefore, because unless there is a strong industry, we cannot accommodate all the people who get trained. Because right now, if somebody gets PhD in physics, most of them get into academics. But we need one more sector which can absorb them. That sector is industry. That sector has to come up. Once it comes up, then in fact, any number of people coming out, we can absorb. Right now, we are managing because people who comes out, either they get into academia in India or they go abroad. But that is not the best situation for a country. If we keep on only exporting people, then that is not the best situation. I think anyway, situation now is much better, quite different from the earlier situation. Earlier, we didn't have even good instruments. Now, good instruments are now, facilities are coming up in so many places. Therefore, situation will be keep changing. But for things like this webinar by people sitting around the world, earlier not possible. Now, because of technology, it is possible. Therefore, these kind of changes will definitely have its impact in future. Therefore, only thing, we should be smart enough to make use of the new changes for our good. And this autonomy of the college will definitely help and drive the college towards more such engagement.
So do you expect that these changes will come within 10 years, in the coming 10 years? That means, I mean, the industry coming into picture where...
See, in fact, already industry have its some effect, but again through the software route. For example, this nowadays many physics students are getting into softwares through the artificial intelligence route. There are various brief courses which helps people to get some professional skills in software through the artificial intelligence route. And their physics background plus artificial intelligence helps them to give some shortcut to some small scale software people. But apart from in a major way to get into that, in fact, one sector where something is happening is this computational physics. Wherever those who are working in the computational aspects, they are able to find good placement in industry. But again, through the software side, they will be using softwares which will be applied in medical imaging and so many things, mostly in image processing. These computational techniques are useful, irrespective of in which.
GE and all, like, you know, companies like, I mean, such companies where, you know, physics students can have some more, I mean, not only software, but whatever that they have learned, things related to that, they will be able to pursue. even they are in industry.
Okay, see, such things.
They, I mean, I just took it as an example. Because such companies there, you have more opportunities. So I just wanted to know whether our students who are coming up will get opportunities there in the coming, I mean, in such companies, like in the future. So that's what you were talking about, no? That,
Yes, yes. In fact, for example, this General Electric has got an industry in for a lab in Bangalore, a major R&D center. There, they employ some physics people. For example, one student who passed from our university, I know him. In fact, he worked in NMR. But he is, after that, he had a postdoc experience, and he is now working in the medical imaging side. And that is because of NMR. See, NMR and magnetic resonance medical, and that side is there. Therefore, he is employed there. Then another friend of mine who did MSc Physics in IIT, then did PhD in IISc in liquids. That is a pure basic study. And after that, he continued to work on liquids in more bio-oriented liquids in US. And now, after that, he came back. He was working in Reddy's Labs in Hyderabad in the pharma side. Now he is the vice president of a pharma company in Bangalore. That is again through the pharma route, not through the pure physics route. There are many are in this. Another friend of mine, he did MSc Physics from IIT. Then he did a PhD in theoretical physics in TIFR. Now he is in Infosys in Bangalore. They are using his theoretical skills for predicting market dynamics and the stock market things like some of these predictive models. He is working with that. Therefore, his expertise in dealing with the models and the predictive capability of the models is being used by the software companies. But the problem is the pure physics things. For that, we need companies which work on sensors, actuators, systems, subsystems, robotics. All these things are required. Those things, companies are there in government labs. There, if you get into one of the activity, mostly are the government labs, but that is not coming out. For example, ISRO has produced so much such technology. Nothing is coming out in the industry. That coupling is simply not there. For example, that VSSC Trivandrum has developed a material which can absorb moisture to 700 times its weight. See the commercial applications of it. But it is developed for making spacesuit. It should absorb a sweat generator. See, these things, if it is released in the public domain, how much of applications will come? So what I'm saying is that link is the most difficult part. That has to come up. See, many of the, even in US, they developed it through the defense route. In US, since they were doing the defense production to the private sector, they had enough money to venture out into this type of evolving areas. And here, entire defense purchases was through the government route. It went into the government sector and abroad, and private sector in a very limited way. For example, first major change is the light combat aircraft. In the LCA, in fact, so many private people are involved, and that made a change. And but mostly in the engineering sector. Therefore, nowadays, those who do PhD in engineering sector, they find opportunities. Earlier, those who do PhD even in engineering sector were not finding opportunities. Nowadays, if you do PhD in engineering sector, you find opportunities. But now the next stage is for physicists. In fact, chemists are also in a better position because there are so many pharmaceutical industry, so many polymer industry, so many oil-related industry. They all need chemistry. Therefore, their situation is different. But physics is made use mostly in semiconductor industry and sensor industry and basically in other high technology area. But the most important is semiconductor industry, which is simply is not existing in the country. For if semiconductor industry is there, so many other things will come. Therefore, that is something which we missed. That so many years people are trying to bring in, nothing is happening. In even now, I don't think anything major has really happened. Therefore, but among all these things, now and one is okay. A lot of entrepreneurship efforts are being encouraged, and this private sector getting into defense, I feel that as Tejal asked, in 10 years time, I feel that change, I feel that should be possible. I will come, definitely.
Okay, sir.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Shakti സാറിനും മോഹൻ സാറിനും ഒക്കെ താങ്ക്സ് പറയാട്ടോ അവരുടെ വാല്യുബിൾ ടൈം ഇതിനായിട്ട് സ്പെയർ ചെയ്തിരുന്നു മോർണിംഗില്. താങ്ക് യു സർ. സോ സീ യു ടുമോറോ. താങ്ക് യു സർ.
Okay.
താങ്ക് യു.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Okay. Thank you. Okay.